We begin in China, where embattled real estate giant Evergrande faces a major moment of truth this week. The company owes an estimated $300 billion and is expected to default on bond payments, some of which are due this Monday, with more coming on Thursday. Evergrande operates and develops 1,300 real estate projects across China and employs 200,000 people. The company financed its breakneck expansion with credit and bond issues. But the pandemic has paralyzed its operations. Its debt equates to 2% of Chinese gross domestic product. Evergrande was always thought to be too big to fail. Now, where have we heard that one before? If it topples, it could take a number of banks down with it, like Lehman Brothers did in 2008. The risk of defaulting has prompted a sell-off. Evergrande stocks have lost 80% of their value since the start of the year.
Family homes of the future, or the bleak monuments to a spectacular business failure? These residential buildings in the city of Luoyang may never be finished. Construction had been moving slowly already. Reports of the impending crisis around Evergrande's gargantuan debt pile brought it to a complete halt. Those who bought apartments here for their families are worried that they will now never be completed. We've been here 3 times and saw that the construction site and the tower crane have not moved. So we came over to ask, and they told us that we had to wait for news. Are you worried when you see negative news about Evergrande? I'm worried. We all bought it ourselves with our hard-earned money. There are unfinished Evergrande projects across China. The company owes at least $300 billion. The crisis is causing panic in Beijing, with fears that a collapse could wreak havoc on the country's financial system. At the Evergrande Oasis property showrooms in Luoyang, the lights showcasing dazzling displays of ambitious property developments are still flashing. But the mood among Evergrande employees is disconsolate. Now we have a lot of layoffs here, and they worry that their wages will not be paid. Although the bosses have said before that layoffs do not affect wages, it's a question of how much time before they get paid after being laid off. Luoyang is known as one of China's 4 historic capitals, but today it is at the center of a very modern Chinese tragedy.
Now, for more, I am joined at the table by our resident China expert, Clifford Coonan. I'm almost there, Clifford. Just wait. Welcome. Clifford, you know what I want to ask, the big question. Is Evergrande going to default?
I think at this stage it's looking very likely. I think now what we're looking at is what form that default will take, whether it'll be a wide-scale default or whether it'll be a sort of a much more managed approach to things. I think the key word here in this whole Evergrande story is contagion. What everyone's worrying about is whether Evergrande's situation will spill over into other areas of the real estate sector, which accounts for 15 to 20% of Chinese GDP, which is a huge amount, and whether that in turn then will spill over into the broader Chinese economy and cause much more serious problems.
So we have to see whether the sickness will spread as such. But Evergrande has sought to compensate investors with real estate. What do you make of that plan?
There is a kind of a whack-a-mole element about this, that if you start giving people real estate to pay for debt, that ultimately you're just kind of masking a problem rather than addressing a problem, which is actually just paying back interest rates. And what we're possibly looking at is a kind of a credit crunch situation where it becomes very difficult to borrow money. And I think that's what everyone is particularly worried about. They also have promised to build 1.4 million homes. That's still outstanding. That's with small investors. You have 170 or so domestic banks, around 120 foreign banks who owed money. So you've got a huge spread in terms of how Evergrande's debt situation is working. And so I think also by creating supply, by giving out property as a way of paying it back, it just exacerbates the problem in the sector as well and could indeed lead to contagion.
Well, whack-a-mole is a notoriously difficult game, but this has, of course, been described as a potential Lehman Brothers moment. Is Beijing expected to step in and bail Evergrande out?
Yeah, I think the Lehman Brothers comparisons are interesting. I mean, they owed about 613 billion when they collapsed in 2008, and then we're looking at 300 billion here. So Lehman Brothers was bigger. But the problem here, I think, is that we may be just looking at the tip of the iceberg. We don't know exactly really how much is owed in the overall sector and the spillover effect within China. We've been saying for many years that China's real estate market is over-leveraged, that if there was ever going to be a problem in the Chinese economy, it was going to happen in the real estate sector. And I think this is the biggest challenge that we've seen since the Lehman Brothers situation. Whether the government will intervene, I don't think the government will intervene directly because we're actually, at the moment, the political climate is kind of pushing back against the tycoons. There was, a few years ago, Evergrande bought a football team with Jack Ma, and they went on to win the Asian Champions Leagues, but those heady days of where the tycoons ran everything are over. And now I think what we're probably more looking at is maybe some kind of managed bailout, but that could also be nationalisation. They may even allow Evergrande to fall and then use that as a way to nationalise the industry.
Certainly a lot of public anger there as well. Clifford Coonan, thank you very much.